Hello and welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm. Thursday, the 11th of September. The international break has come and gone, and the Barclays is back this weekend with Arsenal hosting Nottingham Forest in the early kickoff on Saturday morning. And I am delighted to be joined by Wolfie of Forest Fan TV, who joins us today. Wolfie, welcome to the firm. How are you, my man?
Good, face old man. Thank you for having me. It's been a busy 48 hours in the world of Forest, but there's never a quiet moment with us. So yeah, just about still up.
Well, listen, I'm delighted that you made the show. You talk about it being a busy 48 hours. It's been a busy summer for you guys. So we're going to
Yeah.
grapple with some of that. You know, Big Ange is here. He's back in the Barclays and he's obviously now at Nottingham Forest. Marinakis is absolutely tearing it up at the moment. New sporting director, new manager, lots of signings this summer. Want to get your thoughts, Wolfie, on Mikel Arteta and Arsenal, of course, the outsider view. And I've heard that you're not keen on our gaffer. I'll push you on that shortly. And then, of course, as we normally do on these shows, we'll talk about your form coming into the game and line up some predictions ahead of Saturday. A warm welcome to everybody watching. If you are tuning in for the first time, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. And welcome to our channel members and Patreon members. So, Wolfie, first up, it has been a crazy, crazy couple of hours, like a couple of days, like you've just said. Housekeeping, I got to say, if anybody wants to watch the 3-game sort of midterm review with Clive Palmer of the Arsenal Vision podcast, it is on the channel feed. But let's move on. Ange is back. We'll talk about Nuno Espirito Santo shortly. But what is your sort of, I guess, raw emotion about Big Ange taking the seat in the dugout of Forest?
My brother's a Spurs fan, so I've had a lot of time to discuss this appointment with him, and I've seen the highs and lows that he's gone through over the last 2 seasons with him. I feel like it's a polar opposite to what we've had in recent times. Forest traditionally have been a counter-attacking team, but work from the back and get your goals on the counter-attack. So his philosophy, if he chooses to implement it, which I probably think he will, whether or not that's in the Arsenal game or not, I'm not sure, is going to be a complete shock to the system, especially from what we've seen in our Premier League years since we've been back up. So I'm not going to lie to you, my instant reaction was, really? And then I've just kind of taken a deep breath and just kind of analysed Ange Ball and what he can bring and what have you. And I've looked at it through the eyes of Marinakis, where I think when you look at Forest, the first 2 years were about establishing ourselves in the Premier League. We were able to do that, be it some tight relegation battles. And then last year we've pushed on to Europe. And I feel with Marinakis, his ambitions now is to win a trophy. And what better person to get than someone who always wins in their second season? So I think that's the kind of logic behind it. Now he's in charge. He has my full support. And I don't want to prejudge what he's going to do on the pitch until I've had a sample size of what he actually does. So I'm going in with quite an open mind. But I think it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride, to say the least.
And so you should go in with an open mind. I know he managed that lot up the road, and of course he won his trophy, like you say, in his second season. He was quick to correct his press conference today, saying he also wins in his first season, so maybe there's a bit of excitement there. But look, listen, he's obviously won a trophy. He's won silverware in his career. I think last season you just sort of touched upon it. It was a season of so much joy for you guys. You know, you finished 7th, but I think it was 4 or 5 games to go at the back end of the season. You guys were in 3rd. There was dream of Champions League football. Didn't quite make it. What did you make of the way it sort of ended with Nuno Espirito Santo? We'll talk about Marinakis shortly, but your former manager who's gone out, he will walk away with his head held high, surely.
Yeah, he soured it a bit at the end, but I'll come on to that. I mean, what he did at Forest was sensational. Let's not forget when he joined, Forest got hit with a 4-point deduction under PSR. He was taken over from Steve Cooper, who the majority of the fan base, he'll always hold, in fact, the whole fan base, he'll always hold a special place in the heart, bringing us from the Championship 23 years out of the Premier League. So he had doubters when he came in. I didn't. I liked him. I thought it was a good natural progression from Cooper. I think he's slightly more attuned to the Premier League and adapted well. And I remembered what he did with Wolves, 7-7 European campaign as well with them. So it made sense, but no one really expected us. I was hoping for a European spot last season. But we spent the majority of that season floating in and around 3rd place. I think for a long time we held down 3rd place. And it wasn't until the last 10 or so games where, because he likes a small squad, it started to show. There was tiredness in the squad. There was a couple of key injuries that happened. We just couldn't get it over the line. Had we strengthened in January, I think it could have been a different story. So what he did was with Forest was sensational. I have so much respect for him, but I do not respect how he left in recent days and weeks, because I think that was self-inflicted. There was no one calling for Nuno to be sacked. Everyone was very happy with the job he had done. And it's the whole Edu thing. When Edu came in and created an extra layer for him, I think his ego took a bit of a hit. And he decided to pull the pin out the grenade and start talking about the relationship not as good as it was with Marinakis and what have you, where he was really inferring that the issue was between him and Edu. And, it's mainly over players like Adama Traore. Like, so, some of his shopping list was very questionable in my mind. He wanted Adama Traore to replace Alanga. And I just don't think that's I can see the traits and the attributes, but Adama Traore, with all due respect to Fulham, he doesn't even get into their starting team. So to replace Alanga, who got 17 GA last season, it didn't make much sense to me. And when Edu told him no, that's when that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back, and that forced his hand and he started to talk out in the press. So I think he caused his own exit, if I'm being honest with you. No manager is going to walk in this day and age. They want their payout. But I understand it to a certain extent. But I just think he'd built such a good foundation at Forest that he could have kicked on this season with the players that we brought in, that he could have, emulated or bettered what we did last season. And I just think it's a crying shame that he self-inflicted that exit. For me, mate.
As an outsider looking in, we all know that Nuno Espirito Santo is a really good coach. Obviously managed that lot up the road as well, but he did a really fine job with Wolves. And last season, no one expected Forest to be at the dizzy heights of third come the back end of the season, and to sort of finish it seventh. Obviously not ideal when you've lived that sort of fairy tale for most of the season, but still an insane season. And players they flourish in different environments, and obviously Adama Traore, the player at Wolves, now at Fulham. You mentioned Anthony Elanga. Let's move on to the summer activity. It's been a busy, chaotic summer. We'll come on to Marinakis and Edu, and there's a couple of questions about Edu, but you've been spending. And you've been spending big. I mean, Amari Hutchinson, I think, is your most expensive signing, this courtesy of the Premier League. Dan Ndoye coming in for Bologna. I think that was just shy of £40 million. You spent well over £200 million this summer. I mean, who's taken your eye? Who's really sort of taken your fancy in terms of players to look out for this season?
I like quite a lot of the players that we've signed, but the three that really do excite me is Douglas Luiz. I think, look, ignore what he did at Juventus. There was off the field issues going on there. And look at what he did at Villa. I think Arsenal were close to signing him while Edu was still kind of in your makeup. And I just think he is an absolute quality Premier League proven midfielder. He's still 27. I think he's still got plenty of years ahead of him. And I'm really excited to see. He hasn't played a minute yet. I'm hoping he will start this weekend. He really excites me. We signed Bakwa late on in the transfer window from Strasbourg. He's a real good dribbler, can get lots of goals as well in the French league, good on assist, will take on his defender. And that's the kind of player I feel we've been missing, someone who can dribble with the ball. Whereas Elanga was a bit of a pace merchant, where the ball in behind, he'd use his electric pace to get in there. Bakwa's a different profile to him. And I really like Callum Mwendu. He's a good goal scorer, natural finisher, and he's very good. I mean, James McAtee, I think, will be brilliant. I don't know how he plays with Gibbs White in the team. I think we overspent on Amari Hutchinson. I think he's a 20 to 25 million pound player, if I'm being honest with you. But that was an Edu signing. I think he was in your academy. So Edu knows a lot about him. And I think that had Edu's fingerprints on it. So very good signings. Dan Ndoye's already hit the ground running, scored and assisted, scored in the international break as well. So what we've done is we've created a depth of squad because of the European campaign. But more importantly, and the thing that doesn't get talked about enough, is the amount of players that got re-signed on contracts. Pretty much the whole team, barring Elanga, who left for Newcastle, put pen to paper on new contracts, which I think in itself is a lot of extra signings there. So overall, very happy with the window. My one issue is that we did it quite late on. The argument for that is we had the whole Crystal Palace Conference League, Europa League debate going on, and Forest were waiting to see which competition they were in. But yeah, I can't complain too much about the window. I think we needed another fullback. I know we got Zinchenko very late, the 11th hour in, but I think we needed one more in a CDM. So I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. Very solid window.
And Zinchenko, of course, ineligible for the game on Saturday, playing against his parent club. And, you know, lots of people in the chat have said the best thing you guys have done is prevent Spurs from getting Morgan Gibbs-White, who is a fine player. Let's move on to the right side of the screen. Evangelos Marinakis is certainly larger than life, man. It's like he's got his own sort of zip wire down to the pitch where he remonstrates with referees, with assistants and fourth officials and opponents, his own manager, maybe even some of his own fans. I mean, this guy is box office as an outsider. Is he exciting for you or is he frustrating for you? Like, what do you make of that carry on?
I love him. He's the best thing that's happened to Forest in the last 10 years. If it wasn't for him, we'd still be in the championship. If it wasn't for him, we would have been relegated, coming back up. He puts his money where his mouth is. He's invested in Forest. He came up and he said, we're not just here for, a holiday for a year. We're here to compete, win trophies, establish ourselves, bring back the Clough glory days and what have you. And it's not just words, it's been action. This guy writes off 50 million in debts pretty much every year for Forest. He puts his money where his mouth is. He isn't like the American owners we're seeing. I know you guys have your issues with your owners, and I wouldn't swap him for any owner in the Premier League because he cares about the club and he cares about what the fans care about, which is progression and winning. This is for him. If we were to get Champions League position every season, that wouldn't be enough. He wants trophies. That's the kind of mentality he has. He has that winner's mentality. I understand it from external fans looking in at Forest, but I see it as pure passion. Yeah, he'll go out, he'll argue with the ref, he'll do, there was the whole thing with Nuno, which was blown out of proportion after the Leicester game. I wouldn't swap anything he does because that's the kind of owner I want. Yes, of course, he's invested money. Yes, he will eventually look to make a return on it. But while he's at Forest, he wants to make it the best he can do. And he's just a born winner for me, mate.
Well, of course, you've got European football to look forward to this season. But, of course, last year, FA Cup, you went as far as the semi-finals. I know the League Cup is also there. And with a stronger squad, hopefully you'll have a better season. Baz asks, as we move the conversation on to Edu, what's the Forest fans' opinion on the former Arsenal player? I mean, like you say, interested in one or two players over the summer. You've made some big moves. Impressed so far?
I've got nothing to complain about with Edu. I've spoken to a lot of Arsenal fans who felt that he hindered your transfer windows. He took too long to get deals over the line. That he was always trying to get the best price, for example, on players he was negotiating with. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that with him. I like the players he's brought in. I think outside of Hutchinson, the rest of the business has been good market value prices. And I like that he's looking after the whole kind of multi-club ownership because Marinakis obviously owns a few more clubs as well. So it's part of the long-term strategy and the long-term vision. And this is something that Edu was quite passionate about. One of the reasons I believe he left Arsenal was because he wanted more control. I think there was a bit of, not tension, but power searching between him and Arteta at Arsenal, whereas Marinakis has kind of put him in charge of the whole kind of global organization and said, kind of get on with it and let's see out your vision. So I think he's quite motivated to do his job. Yes, he is probably the reason Nuno's not here, but Nuno is a head coach. I think managers need to start understanding that we're not back in the 80s or early 90s. You're a head coach. It means manage the squad you have a little say in the squad, but you don't get the final say. And so I've been happy with Edu. Again, it's early days. Technically speaking, he didn't join until the start of the summer because of gardening leave and what have you. But realistically, we know he's been working behind the scenes. There's a lot of stuff going on with Brazil. They're looking to acquire another team out in Brazil. So the general picture just feels very positive for Forest at the moment.
Yeah, listen, you're not going to get a lot of love for Edu from the Arsenal fans watching tonight. There's lots of comments about comparing him to Berta, but listen, I'm fortunate enough to have watched Edu play for Arsenal. I've met him a couple of times in person, most recently at the FIFA Best Awards, and he makes a lot of time for people and having good conversations. And he's a really genuinely just a nice bloke. I think sometimes clubs and environments can evolve past someone's
Mm,
ability, and I think it's just the perfect storm. You know, we needed someone different, a fresh approach, and we've got that in Andrea Berta, who's been magnificent this summer. And like you say, Edu just wanted a bit more influence, a bit more control. He was attracted by the whole sort of global nature, the multi-club system
yep.
that Marinakis has, and hopefully it's a good fit for you. And obviously, as a former player, let's wish him well. Let's move on to the game then. So it's been a very busy week. Week. It's been a very busy summer for you guys. Let's take a look at the form guide. Not the best start to the season for Forest. We'll talk about Arsenal and your thoughts on us and our title chances and Arteta shortly, but. Obviously, we're so early into the season that there's a couple of friendlies that have been brought up on the BBC website. But you started the season with a comfortable win at home to Brentford. You then went to Selhurst for their first home game, FA Cup winners, Community Shield winners, of course, and drew 1-1. But more recently, going and having a really bad defeat to West Ham at home, 3 goals in the last 10 minutes. What have you made of your start of the season?
Brentford was one of the best Forest performances I've seen in the Premier League since we've been back. We annihilated them 3-0 at halftime. The game was done and dusted. It was controlled Ange ball. We were playing high pressing, we were winning the ball high, creating plenty of chances. It could have been a lot more. And that was the talk over the summer, that Nuno understood that his system's probably been found out towards the end of last season and was looking to make it more possession based, more attacking. So we came out of that Brentford game thinking, okay, bring it on. Palace, there was a lot of politics in that Palace game. So that was literally after they'd just played their first leg in the Conference League. Their fans were riled up because we took their spot, according to them, even though we had nothing to do with it. So, and Palace are on, I think, a 15-game not losing streak or something silly like that. So a point at Palace away, I think, is a good result. The West Ham one was basically after the pin had been taken out, the grenade. It just felt that it was almost self-sabotage. I fully blame that result on Nuno. Morgan Gibbs-White was having an absolute stinker after 10 minutes, and it didn't get any better. He left him on for the whole 90. He refused to put Douglas Luiz on because he was an Edu signing, in my estimation. I'm speculating on that, but the substitutions were poor. The tactics were poor in that game. And to be honest, the one mistake I think Marinakis has done this year is he didn't sack him after the Palace game, after he said what he said. So I think that kind of bled into that West Ham game, to be honest, mate.
Interesting. Hundreds of you have tuned into tonight's show. If you're enjoying the content and watching for the first time, please do subscribe, of course, to the channel. And if you are here, drop a like in the video. It's a massive help to the channel. And we surpassed 26,000 subs today. So thank you very much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Let's put the show on the other foot. Wolfie, want to get your thoughts on Arsenal and our start to the season. Obviously, away day victory on the opening day at Manchester United. Not the prettiest of performances. Lots was made of Victor Gyökeres's performance and one or two others. Then, of course, we played Leeds at home in our home opening fixture of the game, and we played the football that Arsenal fans have been craving. We got away with a 5-0 victory, and then the title sort of showdown clash at Anfield, where an extraordinary free kick separated the two teams. What do you make of Arsenal's chances and start to the season so far?
I think there was too much said about the Man U game. You took the 3 points at Old Trafford. Traditionally, that's a tough ground for you guys, and I see no issues at all with going there, getting a 1-0 win. Opening day of the season, still some ring rust. You've got that one out the way. We've seen Manchester United be able to pull results off against Man City, Liverpool at times. Man U seem to only be able to get themselves up for those kind of big six clashes, if you like. So I thought you did well there. The Leeds one, I think you struggled a bit for about 29 minutes till you scored from the corner, and then the floodgates opened, but I thought you were quite patient with that one. So I have no problems with what you did in the first two games. My biggest issue was the Liverpool game. I need to see from Arteta signs that he's not afraid to lose at the risk of winning. And when I saw that lineup and you'd named 3 CDMs or 3, okay, they're not all CDMs, but you know what I mean? Like, lack of creativity in that midfield. You had Eze on the bench. He had Odegaard. I know he'd had a shoulder knock, but he was still available there. Wanyeri was there. I wanted to see Arteta go to Anfield and say, we know you're the favourites, but we're not in fear of you. We're coming here. If we lose, we lose. But we're going to let you know that we're here and we're fighting for this title. I think there's so much not talked about the psychological part of football. And, 90% of football, in my opinion, is in the head. 10% is the ability. And I just don't think Arteta has that killer instinct, that trust, that belief that he can go there. For me, he set up too defensively. And I don't think he read the game well enough. I don't think Liverpool were that good. Both defenses were very good, but there wasn't many chances created. And I think a little bit more pressure and you could have won that game. And that for me would have been a statement. And that would have got everyone talking about Arsenal and the opportunity for them to win it. I think you have the squad to win it. I think you have the players to win it. I do not think you have the manager to win it. I
Hold
hate
that
to
thought.
say.
No. Hold that thought just on the gaffer, because Ray was saying this is not the real Wolfie. Where's he gone? We're coming back to the gaffer. There's a couple of things I agree with. As an Arsenal fan, who obviously Anfield, when the lineup was announced, I remember tweeting saying, "Oh, Marino with Rice and Zubimendi. That's quite a flat middle three. You can describe them as central defensive midfielders, central midfielders, whatever you want. Quite a flat middle three, and you haven't got anyone who's going to sort of like break the lines and." Odegaard, of course, was on the bench. New signing Emirates was on the bench, and he came on in the second half. They both came on in the second half. I feel Arteta could have been bolder in that second half. I'll give you that. Completely agree. Yeah. I also agree with you in that, obviously, had we have won at Anfield or even drawn, that's a bit of a statement to say, well, look, these are the two teams, the top dogs that are going to go for the title. They've respected each other. Bit of a game of chess. It was like, I go, you go, I go, you go, and both sort of sat back and respected, and that's fine. It's a good result. And obviously a win would have been a great statement. I can't agree with the Arteta take on that he hasn't got the minerals to get the win and make the statement. I mean, our record against the Big Six, mate, has been phenomenal over the last 2-3 years. I think Anfield and the Etihad are the grounds that we've traditionally sort of just struggled at, but most teams do. And when those teams come to the Emirates, we seem to turn them over quite comfortably. You can't win every game, every big game. And I will also sort of align with you in that I think Arteta can be bolder in certain game state scenarios. There are games where sometimes you go 1-0 up, 2-0 up, and he brings on a defender or a midfielder to kind of shut up shop. And actually the mentality should be just keep going for the kill, like get a third, get a fourth, get a fifth. And in these big teams, like you say, the Anfield selection was surprising. At halftime, we were on top. And if you watch the game back, Liverpool, I've not seen them not press the way they did at Anfield in a long time. Like they gave us a lot of respect because they knew that we were good. Just on Mikel, why is it that you maybe dislike him so much? I mean, obviously non-Arsenal fans seem to dislike him quite a lot, but what is it for you that really turns you off him?
I wouldn't say I dislike him. I don't respect his mentality. I think he has been an excellent progressive manager for you. He got you from places you shouldn't have been back to competing. And there's no harm in saying that's what he is. I just don't think he's got the mentality or the steel to get you over the line. There's been, 3 seasons in a row finishing second. 2 of those, I could argue that you should have won. I mean, what year was it where had you beaten Villa, you would have been champions? It came down to small margins like that. You just can't get it over the line. And to have spent nearly, I think, £1 billion in 6 years, and only have won an FA Cup in his first half season. A lot of people say that was Emirates' team. It was his team as far as I'm concerned because he was in charge. But to not pick up any kind of domestic trophies along the way just to build up that winning mentality, I think he's disrespected the cups too much. He's focused too much on one or other of the competitions. You basically threw in the white flag by about January last year, and you were focusing on the Champions League, in my opinion. Well, if you're going to do that, you better damn well go and win that Champions League, and you didn't. I just don't think he can get you over the line. I would like to hope I'm wrong, because my son's an Arsenal fan. I'd like to see him see it. But I remember this Arsenal team under the Wenger days. The standards were there. Second wasn't acceptable. To finish second 3 years in a row, it is just crazy, having not picked up a title. And I don't think the Arsenal fan base of those times should or would be accepting what they're seeing now, knowing the history of the club. And that for me is the issue. I think he's been given way too much time and way too much money to justify the fact that he's still there 6 years later. And the fact that he's here for me means that this season he has to win one of the two big majors, because winning a League Cup can't be enough with the money you've spent, with this summer, the amount of quality you've brought in, to then just have a League Cup in its stead, I don't think is enough. So I think he's backed himself into a corner. Now, will they sack him in that instance? I don't know. I think your owners are quite happy with Champions League qualification each year. I question their ambition. So I think questions need to be pointed towards your ownership, and do they care about what the fans want? But I also think there's a generational divide. As I mentioned, my son is an Arsenal fan. He hasn't seen the Henry days, the Bergkamp days, Ian Wright, and so on. He really has only known Arteta, and he's quite pleased with what he's seeing. You're up towards the top of the table. He remembers the days when you were finishing 8th, etc. I do honestly think there's a generational divide in the Arsenal fan base from those who saw what the proper, real football was. Because when I used to watch Arsenal, Forest were in the Championship at the time, but you would tune into Arsenal matches to be entertained because you would see that quality. But Arteta, he'll never be a Wenger, and I don't think he'll ever win the league.
Oh, do you know what? There's so much I want to come back to you on Wolfie, but because of the state of the show and we want to focus on the game, I won't, and I'll keep it very short. I mean, you made a couple of points there about where Mikel Arteta inherited the team from, right? We were 8th and we were in a really bad place, a toxic environment, big time Charlies in the dressing room, taking lots of money home, not performing. He had to come in and he had to kind of clean the palette, clean the slate and start again. So he's built this environment. He's cobbled together this squad. You talk about £1 billion over 6 years. You know, that's 12 windows. That's sub £100 million a window. And there's clubs that have been financially doping, as we've seen today in the breaking news, for years, mate. You know that. Everyone deep down knows that what Chelsea and City have been doing, they have set the standard and they've stockpiled players, which means that their net spend becomes lower. And then that's the rhetoric that they beat Arsenal with, because we've not had those players to sell. What I would say, there are things that he can improve in. Absolutely. You know, the domestic cups haven't been as strong as you'd have liked. The fact that he's not been able to rotate players as well as we'd have liked, which caused horrific injuries last season, hamstring injuries, soft tissue injuries, which he can basically look to improve on. I think that's the approach that we've taken this summer, just to kind of really stack the squad and rotate better. You can't dismiss, you know, I mean, the guy is what, 41, 42. You can't say he's never going to be a Wenger or never going to win a league. I understand where you're coming from, but there is no doubt that where he has taken us from to where we are now, to have gone to the last day of the season last year, the year before against City. I think Liverpool shocked us all. They had a largely injury-free season, and just, you know, they went through the back door as soon as Saka, Havertz, and Jesus, our 3 attacking options, were out in January. Right, for 6 months. It's difficult. You take Van Dijk and Salah out of Liverpool and they're not the same team. So all I'll say in closing is that I think he's the right man for us. There are Arsenal fans, as I've just shown in the comments, who also don't really maybe necessarily believe in Mikel. But I think he's done everything he can this summer with Andrea Berta to cobble a squad together that will put us in the best position. And there's pressure on him. You know, the expectations are there. It's his 7th year now that he's going into at Arsenal. He knows he's got to win the league. He knows he's got to win a major trophy, or at least a trophy, because the noise isn't going to go away. But I really appreciate your insight and thoughts. And obviously, as a non-Arsenal fan, I got to respect it. Let's look ahead to Saturday's game and look at last starting 11s. So Arsenal obviously went to Anfield and got beat. You guys got pumped at home to West Ham. Now, you've had lots of signings over the summer. Let's start with the Nottingham Forest team there on the right-hand side. That was your lineup, courtesy of PremierLeague.com. Are you anticipating any changes coming to the Emirates on the Saturday morning?
Yes. Firstly, Ola Aina picked up a hamstring. He must have got the call that Ange was in charge. He was away with Nigeria, and it must have pinged just at the thought of Ange being there. So he's out with a hamstring injury. Which probably means that Savano comes in, the signing we got from Juventus, who himself is just coming back from an injury. So I think we see a switch at right back. I also think Douglas Luiz will come into the team. I think he will replace Sangare. And I expect Wood to be rested because he's been away on international duty, obviously having to fly out to Australasia, the New Zealand team. So I would expect he's probably just got back today or yesterday, and I don't think they'll rush him straight back in. So I expect Igor Jesus or Callum Mwendu to start up front. And I think room will be made for Bakwa. I'm not sure if that'll be Hudson, Odoi, or Ndoy that get dropped, but I think the shape will be the same. I don't know how high the back line will be or how deep it will be. That will be up to Ange. But those will be the slight tweaks I think we will see. I don't think he will over change it just yet because he's only had one full training session with the whole squad. So I expect a couple of changes for injury and probably Wood rested and Douglas Luiz brought into the midfield.
Douglas Luiz coming in is obviously a good player, a player that we liked, Edu liked. Chris Wood, for me, not being in the team after 20 and 36 last season, after 2 and 3 this season already.
Yeah,
that's big because we obviously won't have Saliba at the back. We're going to have Christian Mosquera. Saliba, of course, started at Anfield, is out now for 3 or 4 weeks, hopefully back in time for City. I thought Chris Wood would play and he'd probably lean on trying to get something out of Christian Mosquera because no one really wants to go up against Gabriel Magalhaes.
He's had too much travel in the last kind of 48 hours, so I think he might be rotated. I may be wrong.
Well, let's hope you're right. Callum Hudson-Odoi remains a threat. Morgan Gibbs-White, really, really special player. Very pleased that you guys hung on to him. Ndoy is obviously come over from Bologna. Very exciting player, started in your last game. When you look at the Arsenal team, are there players that you fear? Are there players that you're looking forward to seeing at the weekend?
I think one of your best signings for me has been Timber. I remember calling him when you signed him to be a very good player. And he literally went on the pitch against Forest and was out for a year. So I apologize for that. That was my fault. I really like him. I think he's fantastic. I also like Gyökeres. I know there's been the opposition fans trying to go at Gyökeres already. I mean, we're 3 games in, for God's sake. The man's already scored 2 goals. He's brought in 2 score goals, and that's what he's doing. I think any Arsenal fan that was offered 25 goals from him and 6 touches a game, you would take that. You've been missing a 9 for a very long time. And that's another gripe I have with Arteta, by the way. I think he ignored that 9 position, but it's good to see that you finally filled it. Martinelli, for me, should not be in your team. He looks lost, and he's looked lost for about 18 months for me. So I would expect Eze to come in to replace Martinelli. I don't like Eze on the left unless you're bringing him in as an inside 10. I would actually prefer him. I assume you'll drop Moreno for Odegaard, would be my assumption on that. I still don't think Odegaard has played well since we played you at the Emirates last year. I think that was his best game for you last season. And I would actually prefer Eze in that position, if I'm being honest, over Odegaard. I just think your still weakness is that left forward position, the left wing position. I was expecting you to go out and put a bid maybe for a Rodrigo. I don't know whether or not he was or wasn't available, but there was a few that you could have got on that side that are better than Martinelli. Overall, Arsenal have all the tools to go out and win this game and also win the league. And I think Calafiori, to be honest, has started quite well this season. There was a lot of criticism for him last year. So Saliba will be a loss, but Mosquera has looked good in the 45, whatever minutes he played. So yeah, the only other one that I think is a little bit dodgy, I don't know if you'll agree or disagree, is your goalkeeper. I think he's an excellent shot stopper.
Whoa.
Excellent shot stopper. But the way he wanders out of his box scares me from an Arsenal paradigm.
Interesting.
I think there's been a few mistakes there, and sometimes I feel like he's trying to play like he's a sweeper, where I would prefer him, if I was an Arsenal fan, just to play in goal because he's a fantastic shot stopper. But there's been a couple of mistakes. I think I remember Real Madrid last season. I know you went through, but there were silly mistakes like that and a couple more that were quite similar. So I think he would be even better if he just stayed in his box. But yeah, it's a very good team. I can't say anything wrong with it apart from your left wing.
Now, listen, it's interesting. You know, I live in an Arsenal bubble. You know, I surround myself with Arsenal fans. I go to all the games, and obviously I do my daily shows and the Arsenal community that we've built here on Latte Firm. We live in that bubble. And so it's different to hear thoughts from non-Arsenal fans. I mean, I'll come back here on a couple of things. I mean, David Raya is just a phenomenal goalkeeper. I agree with you. There are a couple of sort of mental concentration lapses that kind of came into last season. We saw it the season before as well, where he made some really questionable passes. Maybe that's why Arteta's finally gone and addressed the number 2 goalkeeping position, but he's a fine keeper. Back four, Timber sensational. Saliba. I mean, one thing we've worked is just that Ministry of Defence. We've got Timber and White as our two right backs, Calafiori and Miles Lewis-Skelly, and of course Piero Hincapié, who we signed, who's an overlapping left back, very quick, rapid up and down the flanks. Magalhaes at the back with Saliba and Mosquera, and oh wow, we're just absolutely stacked. In the midfield, I think you're right. I don't think Mikel Merino starts. I think it'll be Zubimendi in the six with Rice and the skipper, Ødegaard, back in the team. Got to have a good season, Martin Ødegaard, this season. And on the left, I think you're right again. I think Noni Madueke starts on the right. He's looked really bright. Victor Gyökeres, the gunman up top. And hopefully, Eber Etienne gets his full debut at home in front of the Emirates. So it's going to be, I think, a really strong team from Arsenal. I think we're going to start strong and fly out of the blocks. And I think that's what we kind of need to do. I think you underestimate Nottingham Forest at your peril, Arsenal fans. I think they've got some really good individual players, match winners there, particularly in that final third. What do you think is going to happen? Leave us with a prediction, Wolfie. Where's the game going to be won and lost? And what do you think the score might be?
It's an unknown, mate. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know if Ange is setting up as Ange ball, or is he going to set up the way he did in the final against United in the Europa League. I think, look, the only way Forest get something out of this is if we get a manager bounce. Yeah, the old magic manager bounce kicking into play. So on paper, I would expect Arsenal to win. But the only thing I'm holding on to is that manager bounce. I'm worried about Einar being injured. Savannah we haven't seen yet. Zinchenko probably works in an Ange system once but obviously can't play. So I'll go 2-2. I can bring myself to say my team will lose. But yeah, the manager bounce for me is the thing I'm holding on to. But I do expect you to win. Our record at the Emirates has been horrific. We've never technically won there. I was there for the 5-0 defeat when we first came up. We've only scored 1 goal in 3 appearances. So on paper, you should win this. But trends have to break at some point, mate.
They do. I think, and I hope this is what will happen. I think we'll fly out the blocks and we'll just start playing our football the way that we do. We'll be very direct. We'll move the ball quickly. We'll try and get them behind a few times, and it wouldn't surprise me if Ezra and Ødegaard had the keys to unlock what will probably be a fairly low block. If we score first and score early, Wolfie, I think it could be bad news for Forest. And I hope, obviously, it is. As nice as you've been tonight, we batter you. But like Victor Gyökeres, if he scores one, just keeps that sort of record, just that sort of scoring run, pottering along, that'd be good. And obviously, we want swashbuckling football. So look, it's going to be a great game. Listen, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you joining. Very interesting to hear non-Arsenal fans' views on Arsenal. Sometimes a bit hard to take, a bit close to the bone, but them's, you got to ride the waves, right? I wish you well for the season. Obviously, you got Big Ange in charge. Obviously, I hope you get smacked on Saturday, but there we are. If anybody wants to follow Wolfie, he is available, of course, at Forest Fan TV and YouTube FFTV. Is that right? Is that your Twitter handle?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Cool. Well, look after yourselves. We'll be back tomorrow night with the Late Night Lounge with Yembele and Wayne, as we normally do. That's a chill out session. We'll talk and just look back and relax. If anybody wants a double dose of me tonight, I don't know why you would, but the Cannon podcast, I did that just earlier with Rohan. And then Saturday, we'll be back with the match reaction. If you are leaving, please do subscribe if you're new and drop a like on the video. And thank you for 26,000 subs. Take care. Bye for now.